In this video and the next, we're going to look at two different ways to approach layout. One that's heavy on the amount of constraints that you place on yourself, and one that's a bit lighter. First, let's start with that heavier constraint approach. At the beginning of this module, we talked about the rather abrupt transition from comfortable, easy to follow patterns of getting ideas onto a page to the more open and free page of visual note-taking. In this constraint-heavy approach to layout, we're going to add some structure back onto the page, but it will be a structure of our own creation. Typical notebooks come in three styles. The page could be blank, it could be lined, or it could be gridded. In the non-blank cases, those lines are there to tell you where to write, or to help with how you lay out ideas or draw certain images. With this structured approach to layout, you will similarly add marks to the page before a visual note-taking session that will help to guide how you write and how you draw. But we're going to get a lot more creative than simple lined or gridded paper. I want to talk about why it might be worth adding this type of structure to your page, but I think it would be helpful to first look at a few examples. So let's do that now. I dedicated an entire category of activities to this type of layout structure in the Verbal to Visual notebook. I've included those template activities below this video for you to try out. But for now, let's check out a few of those examples so that you can see the type of structure that I'm talking about. In this first example, I have split the page in half, dedicating the left side of the page for bullet point notes while you're taking in ideas. And then you have the right side dedicated to the sketching out of those ideas after the fact. Notice that with this template, you are adding constraints both to where you put ideas on the page, as well as the process of note-taking itself, deciding to do some of the work in the moment and some after the fact. In this next example, I have again broken down the page into areas for visuals and areas for text. You could imagine this page filling up kind of like a storyboard, starting with the visual representation of an idea and then adding helpful captions below those images. In our third example here, you won't see any suggestions about the verbal and visual balance, but instead a simple breakdown of one idea per box, with enough space surrounding those boxes to add connections between multiple ideas as you see fit. Now, the reason that you might want to add this type of constraint to your page is that it frees up your in-the-moment processing power. You won't have to think so much about where to put an idea, so that instead you can focus on the words and the images that represent those ideas. This type of structure limits your layout options in a potentially useful way. And the nice thing about it is that you get to decide what exactly that structure looks like. If you think that one of the templates that I have included below will work for you, then great, use it. But if not, then create your own, one that is nicely aligned with your specific context and your goal. Here are some elements to consider when creating your own template. Use different styles of lines to break up the page, maybe sometimes using dotted lines or sometimes solid lines, depending on how rigid you want to make those separations. Consider also creating some areas that are specifically dedicated for text and others that are dedicated for images. Also think about if there are some spaces that you want to fill in the moment during the note-taking process itself, and some you want to leave for later when you have more time to process and work with those ideas. Also think about the overall flow of information. What type of source are you pulling ideas from? And how might that source, the nature of that source, affect the type of flow you want to create within your note-taking structure? It will likely take some experimentation to find the right amount of and the right type of structure to add to the page before a note-taking session. But I think that experimentation will pay off if you can find the structure that lifts enough of the cognitive load off of your shoulders so that you can focus more intently on the ideas coming in. To get started with that experimentation, check out the templates that I've included below from the Verbal to Visual notebook. Try a few of those templates out, but then also try creating your own custom-built templates that might better fit your needs. After you've given a number of those templates a try, then head on over to the next video where we will peel back some of those constraints and go with a little more of an unstructured approach to layout.